remember when the president said, "You didn't build that. It was because of roads and bridges that people got their business built, and thus government, not the hard sweat of their brow." Lots of people got upset with that comment. But, I've been thinking about it, and I realized he's kind of correct. There's lots of things Americans would never have had without the help of government. So I thought I would take the last 5 minutes of this show, and I'd like to take the time to thank the president and government in general for all the wonderful things that we have today that without government's help we wouldn't have the pleasure of enjoying. To wit, I'd like to thank the government for unmanned drones that are painted black and skulk around at night, which observe, record, and report our whereabouts and wrongdoings to law enforcement without warrant or permission. That includes drones used by the NSA and electronic surveillance. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the government for $15.2 trillion in debt that's been accumulated since he's been president. Without their reckless spending habits and wanton disregard for the taxpayers' wallets, we never would have had that now. 3 cheers for the massive unemployment that is plaguing our nation, along with the huge increase in people on food stamps, Medicaid, and disability plans. It's certain that without all the new government regulations, EPA rules placed on the energy industry and interference in the financial markets that led to the housing crisis, raids on legitimate business like Gibson Guitar, and banking reforms, we never would have had such flat growth in our nation's economy. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the president for personally expanding the war in Afghanistan, destabilizing the Middle East with his speeches about Islamic fundamentalism. Without those, the power vacuum that he created in the Gulf would never exist. We'd never have the opportunity to see Islamists reign supreme over most of the region, lose valuable allies in Egypt, or have thousands of our troops come home cut to shreds by Afghan insurgent bombs as they try to rebuild a nation that never brought anything but misery to its neighbors. Thank you, Mr. President. Let's not forget Nancy Pelosi either. I want to thank her for a few things. Without her help, the House never would have been able to pass the new Obamacare taxation plan, which will increase taxes on millions of Americans, bring new hiring to a halt on many mid-sized businesses, and encourage others to completely eliminate benefits at their offices around the nation. Thank you very much, Nancy. It's certain that Congress played an important role in passing a bill so that we could learn what was in it. Oh, yes, I'd like to thank government for preserving the American auto industry. Well, preserving the union contracts with GM and Chrysler, at least, since Ford did not get any bailouts, while Chrysler is now a set of foreign companies, since the bulk of its assets are now owned by foreign investors. Without government's help, GM never would have been able to build electric cars that no one is buying and cost the taxpayer $40,000 every time one is made. Thank you. I'd like to thank the government for Brian Terry's family. I'd like to thank them on the behalf. I'd like to thank him for without government aid, their son might still be walking around today instead of buried 6 feet under, killed by a bullet from a gun provided by Mexican criminals by the Justice Department. Honorable mention should go to them too, for the hundreds of Mexicans killed below the border by the supply of these weapons. After all, Mexico should be thanking them too, right? I'd like to thank them from Benghazi, certainly for the death of 4 ambassadors and 4 Americans. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank government for our streets, places of travel, and roads and gathering. They would not be safe from old ladies and men in wheelchairs and nuns as we get strip searched to simply travel from city to city and greet jackbooted military armed officers on our subways and trains. Thank you for that. I'd like to thank the government for bailing out foreign countries, the governments of Greece, Spain, and Portugal. I'd like to thank the president on their behalf. They should be thanked for without their help, those people might be living in stable economies too, instead of bankrupted by their respective government partners. And just as a point of reference, the Germans, Italians, and Japanese would like to take the time to thank you for their historical governments being involved in people in a massive world war that killed millions of them. Thank you. Last of all, let's give a special partnership award to Joseph Stalin and Chairman Mao for demonstrating how great government is when it becomes powerful and directs the lives of millions of their constituents to an early grave. 3 cheers for them. Yes. Government is a wonderful thing. By all means, we should realize that without a powerful and all-encompassing government, the world would be a very different place, wouldn't it? Without government directing our lives, it would be a much better place. Without the help of community through government, individual men and women would not accomplish much at all, would they? Just the United States, which was done largely on our own. the world would be a very different place indeed. Yes, thank you. And I think that needs to be said. We need to thank government for all these wonderful things that they've brought us. Oh, sure, roads, bridges, and things. That's great. They don't mention that that most roads in the United States were built by private industry before about 1950. In other words, during the period of greatest economic growth. They don't mention that. They don't mention that most schooling in this country was done by private interests and by volunteers in towns. They don't mention that. They like to say government did that, but they didn't. So it's important that we thank Obama at this time because he's probably feeling pretty underappreciated now. He's probably thinking, why aren't they thanking me for the safety of Americans, the safety that I've provided them that led to the Boston bombing, that led to the shoe bombing, that led to the bombing over Detroit? They've done a bang-out job, haven't they? More like a bang-blow-up job. I'd like to thank the president for all the wonderful things he's done. I hope he's listening. I'm sure he is. I know the NSA is. Maybe they'll send a report to his desk like we've heard they send every morning, and he examines with a fine-tooth comb to see if any of his enemies are on there. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. But at least it's Friday, folks, right? You can enjoy your Friday and enjoy your weekend. Just be careful out there. When you say something about the president, make sure to thank the NSA while you're on the phone. Because after all, government is most responsible for all the good things in life, right? I want you to think about that very carefully this weekend, about the implications of what the NSA is doing, about the expansions to that authority that have happened under Obama, and about what might come down the road during the next election. No matter who's elected, whether right-wing or left-wing, the power of government is the most dangerous power in the world. You know why? Not because it's all powerful, but because we allow it. Tyranny cannot be powerful unless we grant it that power. You think about that. And I'll talk to you again Monday morning. And keep an eye on the website. We're going to do a little bit more follow-up on this Verizon story. Bye-bye.